Hi there! Welcome back to my channel. This is week 2 MELC base of grade 10 science with Mom Season. Our objective for this week's task is describe the feedback mechanisms involved in regulating the process in the female reproductive system. Example is the menstrual cycle. So here are the lists that you need to accomplish for week 2. 1 is pre-assessment. 2. Learning task 1. Can you describe me? 3. Learning task 2 from the pituitary with hugs. 4. Learning task 3. Can you justify me? 5. Learning task 4. There's feedback. 6. Learning task 5. Arrange me please. 7. Learning task 6, which is your performance task. And last, your post-test. For your pre-test, listen or read the following questions carefully. Write the letter of the best answer. For question number 1, which days of the cycle does menstruation occur? A. Days 1 to 6. B. Days 7 to 13. C. Days 14 to 20. D. Days 21 to 28. For question number 2, hormones play an important role in both male and female reproductive system. Recognize what hormone is being released that causes the maturation of egg or follicles in the ovary. A. Progesterone. B. Testosterone. C. Luteinizing hormone. Or D. Follicle stimulating hormone. For question number 3, a woman's unsafe period is the day near or during blank. A. Fertilization. B. Menstruation. C. Ovulation. Or D. Sexual intercourse. For question number 4, menstrual cramps usually occur during menstruation. Find out what is the reason behind cramps. A. It is caused by excessive eating of sour foods. B. It is caused by excessive secretion of prostaglandins. C. It is the result of strong contractions of the uterine wall. Or D. Both B and C. For question number 5, what most likely to happen during ovulation? A. Sperm can fertilize an egg. B. A zygote becomes an embryo. C. An ovum is released from the ovary. D. A follicle releases the hormone FSH. Now that you are done with your pretest, let's proceed with our topic for this week. Feedback mechanism involved in regulating processes in the female reproductive system. Last week, we discussed about reproductive system, the system that is involved in sexual reproduction. Also, endocrine system, that is, the system that composed of different types of glands that secrete different types of hormones that affects almost every cell, organ, and the function of our body. Endocrine system work together with the reproductive system, especially the pituitary gland, that assists reproductive system in reproduction and menstrual cycle. The female reproductive system is regulated by hormones, from the ovaries to the brain and to the pituitary gland. The follicles produces hormones that control the growth and release of eggs from the ovaries, while other hormones prepare the uterus for baby to grow. Other hormones control the stretching of the uterus. In the last slide, you heard about the hormones that is being regulated from the brain coming from pituitary gland. But what is a hormone? Hormones are chemical messengers that are secreted directly into the blood, which carries them to organs and tissues of the body to exert their functions, according to Dr. Mandel, MD. Hormones play an important role in reproductive system. Pituitary gland controls the functions of both testes and ovaries. These hormones keep the reproductive system properly functioning. Now that you have learned what is hormones, let's proceed to what is menstruation. The monthly changes that takes place in the female reproductive system are called menstruation. These cycles occurs every month. Menstruation occurs only in the female reproductive system. But when does menstruation occurs in most female? Menstruation occurs every month from the first onset when a female is between 10 to 13 years old, but it varies among female. And this continues for about 40 years. Did you know that the girl's first menstrual period is called menarche? Now you know. Since monthly ang menstruation, do you experience menstrual cramps? Isa ka ba sa mga babaeng sumasakit ang puson kapag may menstruation? Kung hindi, mapalad ka, sapagkat kakaibang pakiramdam ang pagkakaroon ng menstrual cramps. Usually, napakasakit ng ulo, nakakapanghina, minsan nagdadiarrhea ka pa, at minsan naman, sa sobrang sakit ay halos wala ka nang magawa. Bakit ba nagkakaroon ng menstrual cramps? Menstrual cramps are the results of the strong contractions of the uterine wall that occur before and during menstruation. The cramps can be caused by excessive secretions of prostaglandins. What is prostaglandins? They are a group of lipids made at the site of tissue damage or during an inflammation. Shedding of the endometrium of the uterus results in inflammation, so prostaglandin is being produced. You can see in the picture at the left where is the endometrium. Now you know why you are suffering from menstrual cramps. During that time, please take a rest. Let's proceed with 4 phases of menstrual cycle. First is menstrual flow or the menses. Second is proliferative or follicular. Third is ovulation. And fourth is luteal. Menstrual phase or the menses. It is the time when you get your period, girls. It starts when an egg from the previous cycle isn't fertilized. Because pregnancy hasn't taken place, the thickened lining of your uterus that you can see in the menstrual phase at the picture at the left, that should support a pregnancy, is no longer needed. So it sheds through your vagina in the form of your period. And in this time, you are going to suffer from menstrual cramps. And the level of hormones estrogen and progesterone drop. Follicular or proliferative phase. It starts on the first day of your period. So, there is some overlap with the menstrual phase and ends when you ovulate. It also starts when the hypothalamus sends a signal to your pituitary gland, the master gland, to release the follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH, that assists the maturation of the follicles and causes the secretion of estrogen from the follicles. Estrogen is also increasing at this point, as you can see at the picture in the left, that pushes the pituitary gland to release luteinizing hormone that also initiates the maturation of the follicles of the ovaries. So, at this point, there are 3 hormones that involved in follicular. One is FSH, LH, and the estrogen. Now that we are done with menstrual phase and follicular phase, let's proceed with ovulation phase. It is the time when your ovary releases the mature egg. This egg travels down the fallopian tube, also known as the oviduct, toward the uterus to be fertilized by the sperm. Ovulations happen around day 14 of your cycle if your 28-day cycle, and lasts only about 24 hours. After that, the egg will die or dissolve if it isn't fertilized. During this time, no hormone is being involved. The ovulation phase is the only time during your menstrual cycle that you can get pregnant. You can tell that you're ovulating by symptoms like a slight rise in your basal body temperature. Mataas ng konti ang inyong temperatura. And you have a discharge that is like the texture of an egg white. Now we're down to the last phase, which is luteal. After the follicle releases its egg, it changes into the corpus luteum. This structure releases hormones, mainly progesterone and some estrogen. As you can see at the picture at the left, yung may bilog, yung pang-apat, you can see a triangle na mapula. So, ibig sabihin po nyon, yung lining na yan ay makapal. So, ba't po kumapal yan? Because of the hormones, progesterone, and estrogen. Because, kaya yan pinapakapal para kapag yung egg po ay na-fertilize, ready na po siyang ma-implant dyan. Kasi yan din po yung part kung saan nabubuo o lumalaki yung baby. Yan. So, if you do get pregnant, ang body natin ay magpuproduce ng HCG. Okay. So, ito yung mga nababasa nyo sa pregnancy test. Okay. Kapag umihi kayo, along with the sasama yon sa pag nade-detect ng pregnancy test yon. Kapag buntis ka, any time of the day, makikita doon agad positive. And that hormone maintain the corpus luteum and keeps the uterine lining thick. So, nadagdagan tayo ng isa pang hormone, which is the HCG. So, continuation for a luteal phase. If you don't get pregnant, the corpus luteum will shrink away and be resorbed. So, madidissolve na ito. Madidisintegrate na din siya. This leads to the levels of estrogen and progesterone, which causes the onset of your period. So, as you can see, dito sa number 4 na may bilog, yung triangle ulit na red na makakapal. So, yung reason yan, ba't siya kumapal? Kasi preparation yan for pregnancy. But since hindi ka naman na buntis, so ang mangyayari niyan, magsished yung lining na yan in the form of your period. Yan. So, kagaya dito ng makikita nyo sa picture sa baba, yung may nakaturong arrow, yung peak ng progesterone at saka ng estrogen, pababa na rin siya. Okay? Kasi, yung lining na yon magsished na during your period. Okay, to summarize, so we have menstrual phase. So, walang involved na hormone. So, we have follicular. So, may tatlong hormone na involved doon. So, we have estrogen, luteinizing hormone, and FSH. Ovulation, walang involved na hormone. Pagdating natin dito sa luteal phase, meron naman na involved na hormone. Estrogen and progesterone. Okay? Pero, hindi siya ganun kataas, pero involved pa rin siya. Menstrual cycle. It starts with the pituitary gland that controls and starts the cycle. Pituitary gland releases the hormone LH and FSH that causes the egg to mature. With the release of LH, it produces the hormone progesterone. And with the release of FSH, it causes the secretion of estrogen. In the picture number 2, with the release of hormone estrogen, the uterine lining increases in thickness. The uterine lining becomes thicker so that the fertilized egg can attach to it. Take a look at the picture number 3. The ovary releases an egg on day 14. Assume that no sperm is present. The egg moves through the oviduct and enters the uterus. Take a look at the picture number 4. The uterine lining continues to thicken. The egg has not been fertilized. Therefore, it will not attach to the uterus. Take a look at the picture number 5. The thick uterine lining is no longer necessary, so the cells of the thickened uterine lining break off and leave the vagina at the picture number 6. After menstruation, the cycle starts again. Now that you learned about the menstrual cycle, let's proceed with the feedback mechanism in reproductive system. Literally, there is a feedback that's happening here from pituitary to reproductive, reproductive to pituitary gland. So let's learn about this in the next slide. A feedback mechanism is a process through which the level of one substance influences the level of another substance. A negative feedback affects the production of hormones in the menstrual cycle. High levels of one hormone may inhibit the production of another hormone. So, like the feedback mechanism in menstrual cycle, as you can see, the FSH that being released in the pituitary gland produces the hormone estrogen coming from the ovaries. That is the color green arrow. High levels of estrogen then prevent the further production of FSH. As you can see, the ovaries send a negative feedback to the pituitary gland to inhibit the further production of the FSH. Estrogen also stimulates the release of luteinizing hormone. So as you can see, the ovaries send signal to pituitary gland and then it releases the luteinizing hormone. Luteinizing hormone, which in turn controls the production naman of progesterone. So, the high level of progesterone send a signal, a negative feedback to pituitary gland to inhibit the further production of the luteinizing hormone. So, that is the process of feedback mechanism. So, like in real life, there is a feedback. So, if you're not studying well, the teacher will give you a feedback that this is your performance, ganyan. Sa ating menstrual cycle, there is also a feedback. So, kailangan hindi sosobra, hindi kukulang. So, there is a regulation of hormones that coming from pituitary and the reproductive system. Now that we are done discussing hormones, menstruation, menstrual cycle, 4 phases of menstrual cycle, and feedback mechanism, let's proceed to learning task number 1. Can you describe me? Directions. Study the diagram in the next slide. Describe how menstruation occurs and answer the guide questions that follow. This is the figure that you're going to study to answer the guide question in the next slide. Study carefully the days, basal body temperature, hormone level, FSH, LH, estrogen, progesterone, ovarian cycle, and uterine cycle. There is a corresponding graph in the corresponding cycle or phases. If you're done observing the figure in the previous slide, you can answer now the guide questions. Record your observations on the table below. The phases, the hormones involved in each phases. For number 2, how does the menstrual cycle occur in females? If you're done answering learning task number 1, let's proceed with learning task number 2 from the pituitary with HAGs. Directions. Fill in the blank with correct word that is being given as your choices. Repetition of word or answer is allowed. In the slide, you can see the choices above and the questions or the blanks that you're going to fill in. For number 1, blank, play an important role in both the male and female blank. Number 3, the blank glands control the functions of both the blank and the blank. These hormones keep the blank working properly. For number 5. In this slide is the continuation of learning task number 2, number 6 to 10. Again, the choices are written above, and the questions or the words that you're going to fill in is written below. The production of sperm cells and the release of semen can be regulated by blank for number 6. The female reproductive system, just like the male reproductive system, is also regulated by hormones. The blank for number 7 is produce hormones that control the growth and release of eggs from the blank for number 8. While other hormones prepare the blank for number 9, so a baby can develop, and other blank still control the stretching of the uterus during pregnancy. Now that you're done answering learning task number 2, let's proceed with learning task number 3. Can you justify me? Directions. Check yes if the hormone is involved in regulating the given process. Otherwise, check no if your answer is no. Please state the reason behind. Write your answers in the table shown in the next slide. Good job! You're done with learning task number 3. Let's proceed with learning task number 4. There's feedback. Study the given pictures in the next slide to describe the feedback mechanisms involved during the menstrual cycle, and answer briefly the guide questions in the following slide. If you're done observing and analyzing the picture in the previous slide, you can now answer your guide questions. For number 1, how long does a menstrual cycle usually last if fertilization has not taken place? For number 2, describe what happened to the egg during the first 14 days of the cycle in part B. Number 3, describe what happened to the egg and the uterus during the last 14 days of the cycle in part A. And for number 4, what takes place after the fertilization? For learning task number 5, arrange me please. Direction. Complete the table in the next slide by sequencing the events from the time an egg is ovulated. Arrange orderly by numbering the items from 1 to 7. Write your answer inside the table. Learning task number 6. Performance task. Directions. Choose only one task from the following activities. Again, only one task from the following activities. A. Make a healthy advisory letter that will provide information about menstruation and the female reproductive system. B. Compose a jingle with lyrics or content talking about menstruation and the female reproductive system. C. Make a poster with slogan that illustrates menstruation and the female reproductive system. This is the continuation of learning task number 6, which is a performance task. Again, you need only to choose one task among the choices from A to E. Letter D. Make a brochure about menstruation and the female reproductive system. E. Make a poem about menstruation and the female reproductive system. Below is the rubric for you to self-check while doing the performance task. Accuracy of the content is 30%, organization and coherence of your idea is 20%, clarity of the message is 20%, creativity is 20%, completeness is 10%, the total of 100%. Now we're down to your post-test. Direction. Choose the letter of the correct answer. Write your answer on a separate sheet of paper. For question number 1, which of the following hormones is responsible for the secondary female characteristics? A. Estrogen. B. Progesterone. C. Luteinizing hormone. Or D. Follicle stimulating hormone. For question number 2, which hormone stimulates the endometrium? A. Estrogen. B. Progesterone. C. Luteinizing hormone. Or D. Follicle stimulating hormone. For question number 3, Which of the following inhibits uterine contractions and ovulation? A. Estrogen. B. Progesterone. C. Luteinizing hormone. Or D. Follicle stimulating hormone. For question number 4, which hormone develops and maintains the corpus luteum? A. Estrogen. B. Progesterone. C. Luteinizing hormone. Or D. Follicle stimulating hormone. For question number 5, the blank stimulates the formation of the follicles in the ovaries. A. Estrogen. B. Progesterone. C. Luteinizing hormone. Or D. Follicle stimulating hormone.